Soldier, and Blade Runner. The flop action movie Soldier from 1998 is unofficially but deliberately set in the same universe as Ridley Scott's masterpiece, Blade Runner. The film was written by David Webb Peoples, who co-wrote Blade Runner, and he intentionally planted connections throughout the script. A spinner vehicle, the iconic flying police cars from Blade Runner, appears clearly in the junk pile on the waste disposal planet where much of Soldier takes place. More significantly, a computer record listing the battles Sergeant Todd, played by Kurt Russell, fought in includes the Tannhäuser Gate and the Shoulder of Orion. These are the exact locations Roy Batty mentions in his famous Tears and Rain monologue in Blade Runner. The timeline fits perfectly, with Blade Runner set in 2019 and Soldier beginning in 1996, before jumping to 2036. This implies that Sergeant Todd and Roy Batty, the replicant played by Rutger Hauer, fought in the same off-world conflicts decades apart. Screenwriter David Webb Peoples has confirmed this connection, calling Soldier a side-quel to the Blade Runner universe. The spinner prop has been verified as visible in background shots of the film. This connection validates the Tears and Rain speech as historical fact within the film's lore, rather than just the poetic ramblings of a dying android. It connects a critical darling with a critical flop in an unexpectedly meaningful way, giving Soldier a level of legitimacy and lore weight it never achieved on its own merits. The fact that both films share the same dystopian future, where corporations control off-world colonies and disposable soldiers fight forgotten wars, adds a layer of tragedy to both narratives. Event Horizon and Warhammer. In the Warhammer 40k setting, humanity travels faster than light by passing through the warp, also known as the Immaterium, which is a dimension of pure chaos, inhabited by demons. Ships in this universe require a Geller field to protect the crew from demonic possession, and without it, crews go insane and mutate horrifically. In Event Horizon, the experimental gravity drive folds space to enter a chaos dimension that functions identically to the warp. The crew has no psychic shielding equivalent to a Geller field, which leads directly to possession, mutilation, and blood orgies as the dimension corrupts everyone aboard. Screenwriter Philip Eisner confirmed the connection on Twitter regarding Warhammer 40k, stating he played the tabletop game way too much, so the influence was definitely there. Additionally, the gravity drive itself is designed as 3 rotating rings that align to form an 8-pointed star, mirroring the Chaos Star symbol from Warhammer lore. While legally these remain distinct intellectual properties, the mechanics and themes are functionally identical. This connection transforms a standalone 1990s horror movie into the origin story of humanity's first disastrous attempt at warp travel, occurring millennia before the Emperor of Mankind rises to unite humanity across the galaxy. The film becomes a cautionary tale about humanity's hubris in attempting to breach dimensional barriers without understanding the malevolent forces that exist beyond our reality. The crew of the Event Horizon becomes the first humans to encounter the entities that will eventually be known as the Chaos Gods, setting the stage for 40,000 years of unending warfare and darkness. Alien and Firefly. Joss Whedon included a visual confirmation that the scrappy crew of Firefly exists in the shadow of the alien Xenomorphs. In the pilot episode titled Serenity, during the Battle of Serenity Valley introduction, Malcolm Reynolds takes control of an anti-aircraft gun. The heads-up display on the gun clearly displays the Weyland-Yutani logo, the evil corporation from the Alien franchise. Whedon wrote Alien Resurrection in 1997 before creating Firefly in 2002, making this Easter egg a deliberate connection between his projects. Additionally, the Alliance soldiers' armor in Firefly is actually reused and repainted armor from Starship Troopers, adding another layer of visual connection to dark sci-fi properties. This suggests the Alliance governing body in Firefly might eventually evolve into or become run by the corporate interests of Weyland-Yutani, the company responsible for the nightmarish Xenomorph outbreaks. The implication is chilling when you consider that the same corporate structure governing the outer planets in Firefly could be the precursor to the morally bankrupt company that values alien organisms over human life. This connection suggests that the independence fighters Mal and his crew represent were actually fighting against the early stages of corporate tyranny that would eventually lead to the events of Alien. The frontier spirit of Firefly becomes even more poignant when viewed as humanity's last gasp of freedom before corporations gain total control of space exploration and colonization. Upgrade and Invisible Man. Director Leigh Whannell is secretly building a dark tech universe connecting Upgrade and the 2020 version of The Invisible Man. Both films were written and directed by Whannell, and they share a crucial corporate connection. In Upgrade, released in 2018, the plot involves a rival tech company called Cobalt, where the protagonist's wife works. In The Invisible Man, the abusive villain Adrian Griffin is a tech mogul who runs a company. The company Griffin controls is explicitly shown to be Cobalt, with the branding visible on signs and documents in his laboratory. This implies that the optics suit allowing invisibility in The Invisible Man and the tech world of Upgrade exist in the same universe dominated by these unethical conglomerates. Whannell has confirmed this Easter egg in interviews, making it an intentional shared universe element. This creates a grounded and terrifying tech horror shared universe, where one company is systematically responsible for destroying lives through surveillance and visibility technology. The connection suggests that Cobalt operates without ethical oversight, developing technologies that give individuals godlike power over others. In Upgrade, the protagonist Gray Trace lives in a world shaped by these tech giants. In The Invisible Man, the optics suit allows Adrian Griffin to stalk and terrorize his victim while being completely undetectable. Both films represent the darkest possible applications of cutting-edge science, where innovation serves only to amplify human cruelty and control. Whannell's universe suggests a near future where technology companies operate as modern monopolies, creating products designed not to improve lives, but to dominate and surveil them. Outland and Alien. The 1981 Sean Connery thriller Outland was designed to look and feel exactly like Alien, implying a shared blue-collar space universe. The film is essentially High Noon reimagined as a Western set on a mining moon of Jupiter called Io. The production designers deliberately used the same used future aesthetic that defined Alien from 1979, creating a visual continuity between the films. Costume designer John Mollo worked on both productions, ensuring consistency in the look and feel of the spacesuits and industrial environments. The connection extends beyond aesthetics, as model makers like Martin Bauer worked on both films, using the same kit-bashing techniques to create the gritty, industrial look of the mining colony. While they are legally separate franchises, the visual similarity is so strong that fans often mistake Outland for using leftover Alien models, though they were actually built by the same model makers to evoke that specific atmosphere. Before shared universes became a marketing tactic, these films established a cohesive industrial sci-fi tone, where space travel is not glamorous, but instead dirty, dangerous union work performed by expendable laborers in hostile environments. Both films present a future where corporations exploit workers in remote locations, caring more about profit margins than human safety. The grimy corridors, flickering lights, and utilitarian design philosophy connect the two films visually and thematically. In both universes, the individual is disposable, whether facing a xenomorph on a cargo hauler or corporate corruption on a mining outpost. This shared aesthetic became the blueprint for countless science fiction films that followed, establishing the visual language of blue-collar space exploration that persists to this day. By the way, if this kind of content interests you, I create videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help me out. Life and Venom. Before Venom released in 2018, the internet was convinced that the Jake Gyllenhaal sci-fi horror film Life was a secret origin story for the symbiote. The film Life ends with the alien creature named Calvin reaching Earth in a crash landing. The theory ignited when sharp-eyed fans noticed that the trailer for Life used recycled B-roll footage from Spider-Man 3, specifically a shot of a crowd looking up in terror. This connection to a Spider-Man movie fueled intense speculation that Life was secretly a prequel. Screenwriters Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who wrote both Life and Deadpool, joked about a potential connection, further encouraging the theory. Fans theorized that Calvin the symbiote would eventually bond with Eddie Brock to become Venom. Sony Pictures eventually debunked the connection officially, but the theory fits almost perfectly. Calvin is a black, amorphous, intelligent slime that consumes organic matter and adapts rapidly, matching the symbiote's characteristics exactly. The creature demonstrates intelligence, learns from its environment, and shows a parasitic need to consume living tissue for survival. In life, Calvin systematically kills the crew of the International Space Station, adapting to every attempt to contain or destroy it. The final scene shows Calvin's escape pod landing on Earth while the surviving astronaut drifts into space, setting up a perfect transition to Venom if the connection were real. This represents an example of how audiences crave connections so intensely they will invent them when studios do not provide answers. And in this case, the fan theory was actually darker and more compelling than the standalone Venom movie audiences ultimately received. The theory would have given Venom a genuinely terrifying origin, transforming the symbiote from an alien with ambiguous morality into a proven killer that murdered an entire space station crew before reaching Earth. Predator 2 and Alien. The crossover that spawned a billion-dollar franchise started as a blink-and-you-miss-it joke in Predator 2. In the 1990 film, Danny Glover's character enters the Predator's trophy room aboard the alien ship. Among the collection of skulls from various species, including human and animal remains, there is a clearly visible Xenomorph skull from the Alien franchise. This cameo appearance occurred 14 years before the Alien vs. Predator movie was released in 2004. The prop was created by Stan Winston's studio, which handled special effects for both Aliens and Predator, making the crossover a deliberate Easter egg from the effects team. This single prop is essentially patient zero of modern dark sci-fi crossovers. It moved the Xenomorph from being a singular, terrifying entity in its own isolated horror universe to just another beast in the galaxy that can be hunted and killed by an even more dangerous species, fundamentally changing how audiences perceived both franchises. Before this moment, the Xenomorph represented the ultimate predator, a perfect organism designed purely to kill and reproduce. The revelation that predators hunt xenomorphs for sport repositioned them in the galactic food chain, suggesting an entire universe of dangerous species beyond human comprehension. This brief visual gag launched comic book series, video games, and eventually 2 feature films exploring the conflict between these species. It demonstrated that audiences were hungry for crossover content long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe made shared universes a dominant Hollywood strategy. The Xenomorph skull remains one of the most consequential props in science fiction cinema, proving that sometimes the smallest details can have the largest impact on franchise mythology. Slither and Guardians. James Gunn connected his gross-out horror debut, Slither, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Guardians of the Galaxy. Gunn directed both films, allowing him to plant deliberate connections between them. In Slither, released in 2006, alien slugs infect a small town in South Carolina, turning people into zombies and grotesque meat monsters. In Guardians of the Galaxy, released in 2014, inside the Collector's Museum on the severed head of a celestial called Nowhere, one of the glass containment cells clearly holds the exact same alien slugs from Slither. This visual confirmation implies that the events of Slither happened on Earth within the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline, or possibly on a multiverse variant of Earth, and that the Collector acquired a specimen from the outbreak. James Gunn has acknowledged this Easter egg in interviews and on social media, confirming it was an intentional reference. This connection brings an R-rated body horror film into the PG-13 MCU, implying that somewhere in the vast Marvel timeline, a small American town was brutally decimated by space parasites, while the Avengers were presumably dealing with other threats. The inclusion suggests that Earth in the MCU has faced countless alien incursions beyond the major events shown in the films, with small-scale horrors occurring in forgotten towns that never make it into official reports. The fact that the Collector possesses these slugs indicates they are rare and valuable specimens, possibly from a species that has terrorized multiple worlds. This transforms Slither from a standalone B-movie creature feature into a canonical MCU event, suggesting that Grant's infection and the subsequent parasitic outbreak were significant enough to attract the attention of cosmic beings who collect the rarest items in the universe. WALL-E and Matrix. A dark fan theory proposes that the cute robot WALL-E is actually the prequel to the human enslavement depicted in The Matrix. In WALL-E, humans have become sedentary and obese, plugging into screens and chairs that handle all their bodily needs while they drift through space on the Axiom ship. The Axiom blocks out the sun, or, more accurately, has left the polluted Earth behind entirely. The theory argues that the machines, particularly the autopilot system called Auto, realized that humans were destroying both themselves and the planet. To save humanity from itself, The machines eventually plugged humans into a simulation, which becomes the Matrix, while simultaneously using their bodies for energy, which explains the copper-top battery logic presented in The Matrix. The film WALL-E shows the transition phase where humans are becoming completely dependent on machines for survival. The Matrix shows the final phase where humans are harvested and farmed by machines in massive power plants. Morpheus's line in The Matrix, "We scorched the sky," aligns with the debris-filled and polluted sky visible throughout WALL-E. The theory suggests that when humans returned to Earth at the end of WALL-E, they found it uninhabitable and were forced to rely even more heavily on machines for survival. Over generations, this dependency evolved into the complete subjugation shown in The Matrix, where humans exist only as biological batteries, their minds trapped in a simulated reality, while their bodies are harvested. While this is pure fan speculation with no official confirmation, it remains thematically consistent across both properties. It bridges Pixar's warning about consumerism and environmental collapse with The Matrix warning about control and the loss of human agency, making WALL-E significantly darker in retrospect. The happy ending of returning to Earth might simply be a reboot of the simulation before the machines perfect their control systems, or the first step in humanity's gradual enslavement. This theory transforms a children's film about environmental responsibility into a prequel for one of the darkest visions of humanity's future ever put to screen. Total Recall and Minority Report. Both Total Recall and Minority Report are based on Philip K. Dick stories, but they may exist in a shared timeline documenting the evolution of psychic abilities in humanity. In Total Recall from 1990, set in 2084, audiences see mutants on Mars with psychic abilities, most notably the Resistance leader Quato, who is a parasitic twin with telepathic and precognitive powers. In Minority Report from 2002, set in 2054, the precogs are the children of drug addicts who developed psychic mutations, allowing them to see future murders. The theory connects these films by suggesting that the mutations observed on Mars, caused by radiation and atmospheric conditions in Total Recall, are related to the psychic phenomena that emerge in Minority Report. While the dates create a tight timeline, with Minority Report occurring 30 years before Total Recall, the concept of mutant psychics remains a consistent thread throughout Philip K. Dick's cinematic universe. More significantly, Minority Report was originally developed as a sequel to Total Recall, with the working title Total Recall 2, before Steven Spielberg reworked it into a standalone film. Knowing this production history transforms Minority Report from a standalone Spielberg thriller into a spiritual successor of the Arnold Schwarzenegger action classic. The precogs were originally intended to be evolved versions of the Martian mutants, making the psychic connection between the films deliberate rather than coincidental. This shared DNA suggests a future where humanity's expansion into space and exposure to new environmental conditions triggers latent psychic abilities in certain individuals. Both films explore how governments and corporations exploit these abilities for control, whether through resistance movements on Mars or pre-crime systems on Earth. The connection deepens the tragedy of both narratives, suggesting that psychic abilities, which could represent human evolution and advancement, are instead weaponized and commodified by those in power. The mutants in Total Recall are oppressed and forced into hiding, while the precogs in Minority Report are imprisoned and used as living crime prediction engines, never experiencing freedom or agency. This shared universe presents a consistently bleak vision of humanity's future, where technological and biological advancement only creates new avenues for exploitation and control. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you never miss future uploads. Thanks for watching.